Trainwreck Productions gives you a look at old St. Vincent at Latrobe, Pennsylvania. This is number 4, and this time we're going to look at the ridge, which is, present tense, property that St. Vincent owns up on top of Chestnut Ridge and has owned for a long time. It's about 1,000 acres up there. At one time was very important when St. Vincent was being built. A lot of the original lumber, those big old oak beams, came from up on the ridge. Now we get a look at, this is Latrobe, Greensburg, Youngstown, St. Vincent. Right here is St. Vincent. Up here on top of Chestnut Ridge is the around 1,000 acres that St. Vincent owns up there. Another map. I do like maps. Up here is St. Vincent. And you'll notice down here there's a lot of roads because this is down in the lowland. And then when you get up here, this is up on top of Chestnut Ridge and there are a lot less roads. Over here indicates two things. What was the fire tower and what is St. Vincent's land up there. See, here's the fire tower that used to be there. It's not there anymore. Up here is the Ridge Chapel. It's called St. Boniface Chapel, and that's why the fire tower was called St. Boniface Tower. That's it. It's a drawing I did in 1966. But it's not there anymore. Now this is a view that you could see from the area where the tower was, looking toward the property that St. Vincent had up there, some of the buildings. This was the chapel. That was St. Boniface Chapel. That's a more up close and personal look at the chapel, at the ridge, and a corner of the big stone house that's up there. Right across the road from the chapel was this building, which was in the back a shop. I remember an anvil in there, a place where you could do work on things. And this front part was, I was told, a post office? Well, who am I to question that? At one time, the chapel was one time the church for all the Catholics around that area, and it would seem to have been once a kind of central position or point for people up on the ridge. So it would make sense that this could have been a post office. Who am I to say no? Now this, in a photograph, is the building that we were just looking at. And these are a couple clerical types out practicing their surveying. The chicken coop at the ridge, and maybe we can come into that. Right here is the chicken coop we were looking at, juxtaposed with the barn up at the ridge. The barn, and these are buildings. Both of these are structures that you can live in. This was built in 1852. This was built 13 years later in 1865. This is the chapel, and that's the a post office. And the next view we're going to see is from down this road. That's looking up toward the chapel and the Ridge House. Here we go again. The chapel, the stone house from 1865, and the other house here, which is another ridge house, and it's connected with the stone house. It was built in 1852. In 1855, Boniface Wimmer was writing a letter, and he says, up on the mountain we have 2 buildings and a sawmill. They were They were harvesting lumber at that time up on the ridge for the buildings down at St. Vincent, which were being built at that time. They had sent the brothers up to the ridge to live, and they were up there working. They built these two buildings and probably the chapel too. And the brothers were harvesting lumber to send down to the college and monastery. And they were also farming, growing stuff that they could eat, and also, edibles that they could send down to the college and the monastery. This is looking out from the top of the stone building. There's a dormer looking out. See the barn? And this building up here, which we will see in the next frame. Okay, that was a building probably associated with the farm, because in here could be kept farm implements like plows, hay rake, or maybe a tractor. What you see also is the entrance to a potato cellar. That was a potato cellar down there, because they were growing edibles that they could, grow and store when they're ready to take, until they're ready to take them down below for the college and the monastery. Right over here is the building partially that we were just looking at, with a farm implement out in the field. This is from the second floor of the stone building, a drawing I did in 1970. That is a stone crusher made by Climax Road Machine Company, and I found that at the ridge. I'll show you where. I found it where this road continues on down here a ways, off the visible portion. But it was used at a time when they were building roads. The crushed stone was an important material for building roads. This is the stone crusher right here, back when they were using it. This was a little tipple. This was the conveyor. It was taking the crushed stone into the tipple. And here's an old truck. When I say old, when you look at this thing, this is not a contemporary truck. This is from the older days, maybe the 20s, could be the 30s, but I suspect late 20s. The ridge was, at first, a place to go to work, but as time went on, it became a place where people would go up for some rest and recreation, some time off. These guys look like seminarians who were up on the ridge. And since there were people up on the ridge at times for, some time out, this was a pavilion that was built for, outside eating. There were picnic tables in here. These are the two houses at the ridge. Over here, you can just see a partial view of the chapel. This was the building built in 1852. The brothers built this when they were up there working, and it's a frame building covered with wooden siding. And then 13 years later, they built this building, a nice stone building that the brothers built. Interestingly, in this corner over in here, there is a benchmark which tells the elevation above sea level, which, if my memory is correct, is 2,248 feet above sea level, 0.72. Now, that 0.72 deserves a bit of explanation. Most probably that was not correct, because there's a benchmark down at St. Vincent which reads 1109.72. And one time someone told me that 0.72 was fudged in the benchmarks by old Father Mark Kistner, because 72 was for him an important number. It was the number of books in the Bible, the number of chapters in St. Benedict's Holy Rule, and that number got put in the benchmarks. And that fellow in the passenger seat in the old Model T was Father Mark Kistner, who used to put 0.72 on the end of benchmarks. And driving is Father Cornelius Enders. The car they are driving is an old Model T, which we are told was the first automobile that St. Vincent bought. Now this is another scene up on the ridge. Not a work a day, it's a day off. They're having some watermelon. These guys look like they might be Benedictines. This guy is. And it reminds me that there was a time when the novices were sent to the ridge for some time to work and do things. And I was told they first of all had their hair cut off, almost all of it. This recalling the days when there was farming done up the ridge. They were using horses instead of tractors at that time. And here we go, a guy on a hay rake. He didn't have a tractor, he had a horse. He had genuine horsepower. And this tells us we are just about at the end of our journey, looking at the ridge property. And at this point we say, so long, and we'll see you again when we have another of the views of the ridge.